Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, and welcome to Prog Chattery 777. We're talking about Max Webster, the Max Machine. We're talking about their second studio album, High Class in Borrowed Shoes, released in 1977. So this is a great follow-up to the debut record. They did endure a slight lineup change. The original drummer, Paul Kersey, was replaced by this guy, Gary McCracken. Not a huge change in style as far as the drumming goes. I think they're fairly similar drummers, so there is a nice consistency between the first album and the second album. Returning to the band still, we have Mike Tilka on bass, Kim Mitchell on guitar and vocals, and Terry Watkinson on keyboards, who also sings lead vocals on one track on this album. And, I would say there's an argument to be made that this is kind of the definitive Max Webster album. If you want to know what Max Webster sounds like, this is probably the album to go for. That's not saying it's my favorite Max Webster album, because it's not my personal favorite, but I think, there is something very definitive about this record, and it is, amongst Max Webster fans, I think people tend to hold this in very high regard, as they should. So coming off the success of their first album, they followed up very well. It's another very eclectic and diverse set of songs. There's a few great, heavy rocking songs, a couple of nice ballads. There's like a real nice folk song on here as well, and of course the last song on the album, you get the nice big prog epic, which is fantastic. And yeah, it's really, really good. There's nothing quite as bizarre and quirky as some of the stuff on the first album. There's no like Toronto Tontos on here. But there's still enough weirdness involved that it makes it all worthwhile. And it's like I said, it's a fantastic, definitive Max Webster album. Also worth noting, of course, is Pi Dubois, who remained their lyricist right through to the end of their career, and was Kim Mitchell's lyricist through his solo career as well. So he kind of goes without saying. But he delivers another fantastic set of lyrics on this album, so that's all well and good. It's a funny thing with Max Webster, because they're so hard to define. They're not really a progressive band, they're not really a pop band, they're not like a full-blown heavy hard rock band. But one of the things that you always, if you look up Max Webster, you always see the word glam rock, which I don't really understand, and I think that exclusively has to do with this album cover, because they're all wearing such, eccentric clothes. They wore weird clothes on stage as well, but it was the 70s. Everyone was wearing weird clothes. Doesn't necessarily mean it's glam rock. Rush never got called glam rock just because they were wearing the weird robes in the back of the 2112 album cover. So I don't know. It's just good rock music. And obviously that classic Max Webster sound, that balance between Kim Mitchell's guitar and Terry Watkinson's keyboards is in full effect, and they're really exploiting that probably more consistently on this album than the debut as well. So that's notable. Anyway, we'll dive headlong into the tracks. So the album opens with the title track, High Class in Borrowed Shoes. And what a great track. One of my favorite Max Webster songs, I think. There's almost like a 50s rock and roll sort of vibe to it, It feels like 50s rock on steroids. Well, obviously in the context of the 70s anyways. And it's a really, really good track. The keyboards are very prominent. There's a really nice blend of that, when Watkinson throws some of those little synthy melodies in there to supplement the guitar. It's great. Really cool little bridge section where things kind of switch around a little bit, and we get a nice, textured thing from Terry Watkinson, and some great guitar playing from Kim Mitchell. One of the great Max Webster songs. It's one of the songs that Kim Mitchell typically plays solo. He does play a few Max Webster songs at his solo shows now and again, and he does play High Class and Borrowed Shoes a fair bit, I do believe. So yeah, great track. What more can be said? Track 2, Diamonds, Diamonds. Great song. This is a staple on Ontario radio stations. You hear this a fair bit. Very, very mellow. Great contrast to the first song. The first song is just this, rip-roaring, high-energy, rock and roll number. And Diamonds, Diamonds is very, very, subtle and slow. And it's a love song, really, I guess. It's certainly ballady. Driven almost entirely by Terry Watkinson's keyboards, even though Kim Mitchell wrote the music. So that's really, really cool. Again, some of those bizarre, those bizarre Pi Dubois lyrics are fully present there. We got, she takes more whiskey than my wine, I whine. which is quite strange. And there's a great, some of his lyrics, although they're all so weird, some of them have got a really sweet sentiment. Never want to be lost without you. Those little background vocals that kind of hover away back there. Those are lovely. Yeah, great track. Very jazzy as well. And the first few verses are just the keyboards pretty much, and it slowly builds. And I love the very end too. We get it almost feels like the song's gonna go into a different section, but it just kind of wraps itself up nicely. And yeah, great track. Diamonds, Diamonds. Track 3, we get Gravity. This is one of the classic Max Webster songs, if there ever was one. And it's kind of like the heavy riff kind of a thing, but it's also very strange and bizarre. This might be the closest to coming to something like Toronto Tontos on the album. Of course, it opens with those really plinky, keyboard sound. Which is quite weird, and then the big heavy riff comes in, and yeah, it's a great song. The lyrics are just so strange. I have no idea what the song's about. Some of those lines, forget that fear of gravity, and I'll have trouble getting through the day. Get a little savagery into your life, and I'll have trouble tying my shoes. No idea what that means, but it's cool. It's just as you listen to the song and you hear these words go by you, sometimes you just think, what? And I'll stand outside the window without a cigarette. What is he talking about? What is he on? Really, really good song. The bridge is particularly notable, and it's very proggy because the song almost takes like a 90-degree turn and almost stops on a dime. And we actually get the sound of a coin being flipped at one point, and it kind of turns into this, gentle guitar arpeggio and this weird little synth solo by Terry Watkinson, and it all builds its way back up, and we get into that heavy chorus. Forget that fear of gravity. And yeah, it's a great little track. One of the best Max Webster tracks. If there is any Max Webster compilations, Gravity needs to be on there. Good stuff. Moving on to track 4, Words to Words. This is the ballad of the album. Really, really nice little track, actually. Very acoustic and very, very sentimental and very reflective. It's and then there's this nice lyrics like think I'm gonna settle down tonight, face to face, words to words. It is a love song, I think. And yeah, like I said, driven by the guitar, and there's some nice, tasteful little keyboards that kind of pop up and down there. So yeah, it's a great track. Oh, there we go. I was concerned. I wanted to make sure I had my lyric sheet here, as I've got new inner sleeves because I'm a pretentious vinyl obsessive. I'm getting sidetracked here. We'll move on to track 5. Closing out side 1, we get a track called America's Veins. Great track. This is the big heavy riff, and it's a great little juxtaposition after the mellow balladry of Words to Words. We get that there's drum fill that comes in there, really good. Yeah, fantastic track. It is very guitar heavy. It is guitar dominated, but it's made up for the middle section, which has a phenomenal Terry Watkinson keyboard solo. He's kind of got that Moog sound going on. And probably one of Terry Watkinson's definitive keyboard moments, actually. I love that section in the middle. And the "Oh Water" section when Kim Mitchell's yelling that out. Just a great song. And then we get at the very end of the song, we get that big, long-winded drum fill that just kind of goes up and down the toms. And then I really like the ending for some reason. It might be too long, but I like how it finishes off after all those tom fills and just it's almost like the song is slowly falling apart and decaying before your very ears. You get those really cool, sludgy kind of keyboard tones from Watkinson at the end there as well. I've always been a big fan of America's Veins. One of my favorites on the album. One of my favorite Max songs. We flip the record over, we do, yes we do, and we get to side 2, which opens with "Oh War." Another one of those classic Max Webster songs. I think this is another one that Kim Mitchell has played live solo a fair bit across Canada. Great track, definitely the anti-war kind of a thing. And maybe that's why Max never got the full success outside, because there is an F-bomb on this track in the 70s. That's hardcore, man. What's the line? Because I'd say Instead of thank you, your choice under your breath. Oh, say go to hell, I'll go American Express. Again, it's just those bizarre lyrics. They're fantastic. And the song itself is really cool. It's just a big, heavy blues, really, and it's got that march at the beginning, dun 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 dun, and that little syncopated thing pops up a few times towards the song. It's a really cool arrangement. Great kind of keyboard effect solo towards the middle, where he's just playing with sounds. He's just letting these bizarre sounds kind of rise over and under the music. It sounds very mechanical, and sounds like a tank lurching its way through the battleground. And also a phenomenal guitar solo on that track as well. So, Oh War, fantastic, heavy, bluesy, anti-war type song with an F-bomb. We move on to track 2 of side 2, On the Road. This is one of those overlooked Max Webster songs, I think. This is a tremendous folk song. And it doesn't have anything that's super bizarre or quirky. They're not trying too hard to be weird. But hey, it's just a great song. And again, so some more really great lyrics on there. Some say it's freedom, some say it's freedom. Freedom, some say, is when you get back home. So it's obvious what it's about. It's about a life on the road, and obviously being a touring band in the 70s, you'd spend an awfully long time on the road. So it's a cool sort of reflection of that lifestyle. But yeah, it's very guitar, like acoustic guitar heavy, and it's probably the folkiest that Max ever got, actually. But yeah, great song. And it's even by Max Webster standards, it's one of those songs that you often forget about, and then you listen to it. It's like, oh wow, that's a beautiful little track. Moving on, getting towards the end of the album now, we got track 3 of side 2, Rainchild. This was written by Terry Watkinson and sung by Terry Watkinson. It's the first time we get to hear Terry's vocals. And really great track. I remember the first time I had heard this, when I was I've known Max Webster for a long time, since I was like 12 years old, or maybe even younger. And I used to have just a compilation album because my dad said, you got to get into Max Webster. And the first time I actually heard this whole album properly, and I heard Rainchild, I thought, wow, it's so good. And it's different from Max, but it fits. That's the thing with Max Webster. Their albums tend to be very, very diverse, but they're still very coherent. And it's cool that a song like Rainchild fits so well with another song like In Context of the Moon or War. So that's cool. Starts out with Gary McCracken just laying down a very fundamental, straight up rock beat, and we go into this. It's a great little rock song. Obviously, because it's written by Terry Watkinson, it's very much led by the keyboards. But the guitar still plays a really, really good supplementary role, and it's a fantastic track. There's some great little instrumental sections there, just like those little ascending riffs. Do 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 do. There's nothing flashy about it. I mean, Max Webster was never a flashy band, at least in terms of their playing, but it's just a very satisfying, well-constructed piece of music. So their instrumental section in that is fantastic. And very well sung, too. Terry Watkinson was a great singer. He's a very different singer from Kim Mitchell. Like I said in the other video, Kim's got this great kind of shouty way of singing in the 70s. And Watkinson, I think, is much more melodic, and he has a more accessible voice. So it's good that they used his voice on some of these tracks. And obviously the one that he wrote, naturally. But yeah, Rainchild, great track. And we come towards the very end of the album now with the grand finale, my favorite song on the album, In Context of the Moon, the second Moon song of their collection. And this is the prog thing. It's only 5 minutes. It's not like a big 10-minute epic a la Yes or anything like that. But it's a really cool arrangement. There's lots of cool riffs, and I mean, it's very unpredictable, and that's exactly the kind of thing I want out of music anyways. I like when music surprises me, and In Context of the Moon, even I've heard it 500,000 times in my life probably, but there's still moments in it that kind of catch me off guard, that you forget where the song goes to or whatever. Just great stuff. Opens with a little drum fill at the start, and we get that kind of happy riff. And then it goes into the heavier bluesy thing. Doom, 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 doom. And we get those classic Pi Dubois lyrics. In context of the stars, you point at my point right. You reflect off my sunglasses, waiting for the moon on a tight night. In context of the sun, 0 degrees is where we start. You grind on my gas pedal, red line earth clutch in my heart. And there's a few other lyrics on there. I don't know why I like the lyrics so much. There's just something, I like the surrealism of it all. But yeah, the first half of the song, we get a couple of the verses with that heavy riff. And about halfway through, we get, there's a nice little bass solo, actually. Mike Tilka, this is his final album as bass player for Max Webster, and he gets a nice little bass solo in there. And the second half of the song is this great sort of fusion thing. You know, they were hip to what was going on in fusion music, and even though, you know, they weren't playing to the same extent as bands like, you know, Brand X or Weather Report or what have you. You know, it's a very, very convincing, well put together, jazzy, fusiony kind of a thing. We get some, you know, they get nice lyrics towards the end, and I love that ooh la lo la lo la lo 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 lo. It's great. It's very melodic. It's musical. It's jazzy. It's fast paced, and it's fantastic. It's one of my favorite Max songs. Context of the Moon is ace, and of course it all winds its way back up to that big riff. And there you have it. That is the end of their second album. So yeah, what more can be said? It's a great album. Great follow-up to their first album, and like I said, High Class and Borrowed Shoes is arguably like the definitive Max Webster album in the sense of, you know, if you want to know what Max Webster's like, you should get High Class and Borrowed Shoes, because that's what they're like. But better yet, buy the Party, buy the new box set that just came out. You can get it in either vinyl or CDs, and you get all five studio albums, 1 or 2 live albums, and Kim Mitchell's first solo album. So it's very much worth it. If you are interested in 70s rock, you must buy that box set if you don't have any Max Webster otherwise. If you do, continue listening to Max Webster and celebrate them, because they were great. One of Canada's lost treasures. Anyway, it sounds like I'm wrapping up the whole series, but I've still got 3 albums to go. So, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, all the rest of it, and stay tuned for more Max Webster and Rush videos. You will see me in the future. Bye-bye, everybody.